Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge, and today we have X-Men 97. This is the return to the animated X-Men series, technically X-Men 92, I believe. It ran a number of years. This is, of course, just released yesterday, and it's 2 episodes have been released so far. I watched both of them. I have to admit, I have not ever completed the original X-Men animated series. Why? I'm a big X-Men fan. I've been reading the X-Men comics since the 80s. Yeah. It's pretty much like the Claremont, early John Romita, late Paul Smith stuff's 170s, technically 190, but there were some that I read here and there. But the 190s, the early mid 190s was where I started with the Secret Wars 2 crossover. So I know my X-Men really well. And when I got to be, older, I just didn't get around to watching cartoons, even though I was still reading the comics. And I always felt that the cartoons are a little bit cornier. I've seen some of the original cartoon. We actually have watched it as part of the series right here. Watched the first 2 episodes many months or years ago when this originally aired. Now, when it got originally selected, I didn't watch it just because I didn't want to see necessarily watered down. What I saw was watered down versions of the comic stories that I loved. And yes, I know that the series, the cartoon, definitely borrowed from a lot of major storylines. What made it difficult for me when watching this is the fact that I didn't know which storylines had already been used. So that when they did, yes, the first 2 episodes dig heavily into that early era of X-Men comics that I read. There's some elements that go all the way back to late 190s, especially X-Men 200, if you know what happens in X-Men 200. Yeah, the second episode is very much a version of X-Men 200. And there are characters that make special appearances that you don't expect, that I was surprised they hadn't used before. But yeah, I don't want to spoil anything. That's why I'm being really cagey about saying things, because some pretty major stuff happens. I will tell you that a new mutant, not a new mutant, but a new mutant makes a small cameo appearance. Well, not a small, but a fairly important cameo appearance in the first episode. So, yeah, we'll get to see that character briefly, and I have a feeling we'll see that character again. We get to see... Oh, yeah, I just realized they're really digging into that John Romita Jr. Claremont era in the 190s, especially dealing with Storm, especially dealing with Magneto, especially dealing with Jean and Scott. But those of you who know... well, if you've seen the trailer, if you know you're going to watch this, you probably saw the trailer. Jean's pregnant. Jean's very pregnant, and you know that she's going to have a baby, and you know what that baby's going to be called. And but you also know that technically, Jean isn't the mother of her own baby. I know, but she is, but she isn't. It's complicated. But and then for me, that was kind of a thing where it's like, how are they gonna handle this? I mean, it's a pretty big departure. When considering that so many other things are referenced that go back to the comics. Obviously, the Wolverine Jean Scott triangle, even though she's pregnant and presumably married to Scott, Logan is still just totally crushing on her. There's that kind of connection that apparently happened in the original cartoon between Rogue and Magneto, despite his considerable age. He's much older than her. But yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot going on here, and some surprising twists and turns. that are a bit more mature than I expected to see. Yeah, Wolverine's going to pop his claws, but never really stab anybody. It's just the way it is. I mean, he might, but he's going to tear up robots and stuff. But there's going to be no blood drawn, no guts spilling out everywhere. It's not going to happen here, so don't expect that. It's a kid's cartoon. But it's also humongous fan service for those of us who were reading comics back in the day. I'm gonna bring this out. A friend of mine wrote a book about Wolverine. It's called Untamed, and her name's Susanna Flores. She the reason I know her is because a friend of ours introduced us, and I became a consultant about the X-Men on the book. That's how big of an X-Men nerd. I'm a fan nerd. I didn't write into the comics or anything, but I'm enough of a X-Men fan nerd that I get quoted in here at least once or twice. So, and I was her resource for questions whenever that kind of stuff happens. So, if you get a chance, if you want to learn about the ways that Wolverine thinks, she is a doctor, she is a psychologist, and she has interviewed tons of people over the years that created Wolverine stories, and it's worth checking out. So, Untamed. It's on Amazon. It's on Amazon. Check it out. That's how big of a X-Men nerd I am. But yeah, for some reason I just didn't get into the original cartoons, but I'm definitely into this. I am going to come back week after week to watch this, and I'm going to put it on my to watch list. I'm going to save it. But now I got to wait a week between each episode. I think this now is going to force me to go back and finish the original series, which is, of course, all on Disney+. So, assuming that there isn't anything objectionable that they would have to skip an episode like sometimes they do with some cartoons, but a lot of this, the X-Men, the foundation of what the X-Men is, it's dealing with prejudice and hatred of someone who's different. There are a number of different scenes in this that, X-Men have always been this way. It's always been a societal and political issue. There are moments in this that feel way too relevant to today. Not the comics that were written in the 80s or the cartoon that came out in the 90s. The storylines pertain in our current world today. It's a relevant mirror to what we're experiencing with, at least in America here, and I'm sure around the world, but especially America, and the prejudice and the hatred of people who are different. It's unnerving how certain people still seem to hang on to old ideas. And by the way, aesthetically, this, even though the animation has definitely improved since the old 90s version of the cartoon, the animation looks great for it being 2D and old-fashioned, but it is definitely very much set in 97. It's not just a part of the title, just to connect it to the old series. It's still 97. As far as I know, nobody's on their cell phones. Nobody's got a smartphone. There's still lots of technological barriers that they're probably not going to catch up on anytime soon. So, yeah, it'll be interesting if they ever jump far enough into the future, to the year 2024. That's probably when the Days of Future Past happen. Yeah. All the voices that you remember from the old cartoon, I'm pretty sure most of the old voices are still in here in the cast. Ray Chase as Cyclops, Jennifer Hale as Jean Grey, Cal Dot as Wolverine, Lenore Zahn as Rogue, and so many more. Just watch for lots of surprising twists and turns, even though you probably, if you're an X-Men fan, you know where some of these storylines and characters and cameos are going. I think it had the opportunity to surprise even me. So that's saying something, I guess. So I enjoyed it a lot, and I did not expect to be this over the top for it, considering I'd never really watched the original animated series that much. So let's pick tomorrow's episode. 367. That is in the thes. I'm pretty sure. 367. What if it's an X-Men? 367 is not. It's a documentary, a very interestingly, strangely titled one. It doesn't have to do with animals or mummies or sharks or history's mysteries. It is, all right, Water and Power, a California heist. That seems relevant to my life. I live in California. Anyway, Water and Power, a California heist on the next Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow with that. Bye.